I would like to begin with the study of metaphysics. Metaphysics is the study of being, the most universal and fundamental truths of being that applies to everything that exists. Now, I would like to add a disclaimer. Metaphysics is difficult. There's no getting around it. It's difficult to understand, it's difficult to talk about and teach. And I thought about removing this section to make the paper more accessible, but I can't. Recovery has a necessary moral component. It contains an ethical system. Um, and our ethics must be grounded in sound psychology or a proper understanding of the human person, of the human soul. And sound psychology must be founded in metaphysics and being. So, to gain a deeper understanding of recovery and addiction, it must be grounded in sound metaphysics, just as a building must have a solid foundation. I have met people who, after I mention I study Aristotle, they say, "Oh, I could never understand something like that." And that's just not true. An idea that has guided my efforts successfully is that if somebody else can understand something, or if somebody else can do something, I can do it too. This idea has expanded many horizons in what I was capable of doing. Otherwise, my mind would have been closed to many possibilities. If I can understand metaphysics, you can too. The issue isn't capability, it's effort. These ideas are difficult to take, are difficult, and they take effort to understand them. If you are not willing to put the effort in, that's fine. There are many things that don't interest me that I would never expend the effort to learn, like a guitar, for example. I would just like my reader to have an open mind as to what they are capable of, and if they put in the intellectual effort, they will be rewarded. With what? Well, with truth and beauty and goodness, and a deeper understanding of a central component of our lives as addicts in recovery. The study of recovery is the study of a change, the change from addicted to recovered. Change in being presupposes being. Therefore, in order to understand recovery, we must understand metaphysics. The study of metaphysics is based on first principles, fundamental truths from which all further truths proceed. If something exists because of something prior to it, and if that truth is based on a further truth, and if we were to extend this chain into infinity, nothing would exist. Nothing would be true, because it is an infinity of contingency, an infinity of dependence. Therefore, there must be first principles, truths that are the starting point of all knowledge and truth. First principles of philosophy can't be proven deductively. They must be accepted at face value. They are like axiom in mathematics. Though they are abstract ideas, they should be perceived as common sense, and they shouldn't be that far from how you already view the world if you are rational. At every moment, we are inundated with a variety of sense objects, which we know as real, such as a computer or a dog. But there is an act of the intellect that happens prior to the knowledge of this or that particular being, which is the intuition of being itself and its opposition to non-being. This truth can be stated simply as being exists, nothing does not. And this principle can be stated in another ways, such as the principle of an identity. A is A, not A is not A. And the principle of contradiction. A square cannot be a circle. There is no such thing as a square circle. Now, these laws are not just of the intellect, but of reality. A square circle is not just incomprehensible, but unrealizable. The truth is simple and common sense, but very powerful. Many philosophical errors can be reduced to a denial of this principle. For example, a common error in modern culture is relativism, that truth exists only in the mind, and there is nothing, therefore, something can be true and false. This principle grounds the mind in objective reality, and this truth is extremely important for the alcoholic in recovery. For if the truth of my powerlessness and the truth of my character defects, the truth of my harm to others, existed only in my mind, what's the point of doing the steps? I would like to introduce to you the thoughts of an ancient Greek philosopher named Parmenides, who lived around 500 BC. He was very impressed with the principle of contradiction and identity, and from this truth he made some shocking claims about the world. While his conclusions are wrong, his philosophy was sound, and he made some important insights into the nature of being, which will be the foundation of our further understanding of being. Everywhere we see things coming into existence and decaying, being born and dying. This is a world of change and of motion. Also, we see a multitude of things. This is a world that contains diversity. These facts we observe daily and we take for granted. But early Greek philosophers had trouble explaining these truths. Parmenides thought that the observable facts and the first principle of being were in conflict. He argued thus: how can something come to be? There is only being and nothing. Now, something can't come to be from being because it already exists, and it is not sufficient to explain origin. And something cannot come to be from nothing because from nothing, nothing comes. Therefore, there is no motion or change. Where does multiplicity and diversity come from? Parmenides answers: because of its simplicity, being cannot be divided or limited or diversified by itself, but only by something else. But the only other thing than being is nothing. Therefore, from these two arguments, Parmenides concludes that there is only one absolute, immutable, changeless being, and that all change and diversity are illusions. Parmenides concludes, being is, nothing is not. We can never get past this thought. Now, this may sound shocking, but Parmenides' reasoning was correct. Being can't come from being already existing, and it can't come from nothing. How do we solve this problem? Well, there must be some truth that is in between being and nothing. Aristotle solved this by stating that something comes to be from what is determinable, what is transformable, what is capable of being. It is not being absolutely, but capable of being. These two modes of being are called potency and act. A block of wood contains the potency to be fire and also to be carved in a statue. Though when fire or a statue come to be in the block of wood, it is being in act. Parmenides' reasoning was correct, but his error was that he presupposed being was univocal, that being was of only one type. Aristotle understood that being at its most fundamental was divided into potency and act, and on this primordial level all further principles are founded. In fact, you could say potency and act define the metaphysics of Aristotle. To emphasize the importance of the ideas of potency and act, I would like to read to you the first of the 24 Theses of St. Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas states, and he's at this level of his philosophy, he's basically Aristotelian. Potency and act so divide being that whatever exists is either a pure act or is necessarily composed of potency and act as to its primordial and intrinsic principles. And the commentary on that is: every actual subsisting being, inanimate bodies and animals, men and angels, creatures and creator, must either be pure act, a perfection which is neither the complement of potency nor the potency which lacks further complement, or potency mixed with act, something capable of perfection and some perfection fulfilling this capacity. This statement is true both in the existential and the essential order. In each of these orders, the composition of act and potency is that of two really distinct principles as being itself. intrinsic to the existing being or to its essence, into which finally all other principles can be resolved, while they cannot be resolved into any other. So this statement is quite loaded, and to be honest with you, it's very deep, and I don't fully understand it. I don't understand the whole of it, but I will try to do it justice. First, I would like to bring my readers to the idea of a pure act. What is this? It's God. And I would like to ask my reader to dismiss this idea for now, but hold it in the back of their mind, for we do not have enough understanding of metaphysics to understand a being of pure act. I will get to this later. I would like to bring my reader's attention to the word composed, that potency and act are two distinct truths that should not be confused or confounded, that all creation is divided at a fundamental level, that this is a composition of distinct truths. I would also like to bring my listeners' attention to the word primordial, meaning potency and act come first in our understanding of being. It is truly fundamental to our subsequent discussion on metaphysics, will only be understood in the light of potency and act. But potency and act need no further truth to explain it. It is a primordial idea. The thesis also mentions the existential and essential order. What is this? These are the two ways potency and act are manifested in the real world. Potency and act in the existential form is called essence and existence. Potency and act in the essential form is called matter and form, and I will further explain these. Let us consider essence and existence and its relationship to potency and act. I mentioned that a block of wood contains potential to be fire, but before it contained potential for fire, the block of wood must exist. So before we consider the specific type of potency that is in the matter of the block of wood, we must consider potency and act at a more fundamental level, at the order of existence. Earlier I talked about truth, beauty, and goodness being ultimately immaterial, but one may object that we experience truth, beauty, and goodness in the material world. But can the beauty of a sunset be separated from the particles of light and the clouds? This relationship can be explained by participation. The origin of beauty is not in the sunset. It merely participates in the beauty it receives, a beauty that has its origin elsewhere. We know this because of the principle that multiplicity does not explain unity. If we look at Jane and we find that she is beautiful, and if Jessica is also beautiful, and likewise Mary is also beautiful, then when we must conclude that the origin of beauty is outside of them, that they merely participate in beauty. This is because if the origin of beauty was in them, then they would not share in any truth between them, because different causes have different effects. Multiplicity does not explain unity. Now I have introduced two ideas that need explaining: the origin of being and participated being. Participation in being presupposes potency in act. For that which participates, that which receives, is passive, is being in potency. And that which everything participates in is being in act. It has its origin outside of every participating being. But what does it mean to be being in potency and being in act? Let us consider the following statement. Something exists only inasmuch as it is able. Can anyone argue with this? In this statement we have two truths, being itself and the capability of being. Being is limited by this capability. The limits of something is its definition. what it is. In other words, its essence. This essence, this capability for existence, is identified with potency. Existence is the ultimate actuality that makes every essence to be. Essence participates in the actuality of existence. In other words, something only exists in as much as it is able. Recall that Parmenides said that being cannot be divided or limited by itself, and only by something else. This is because of the simplicity of being. It simply is. Being, actuality, is also unlimited of itself and requires another principle to explain limitation. This principle that divides being, that explains the finite nature of creation, its potency, its essence. It is the essence of a cow that distinguishes the being of a cow from the being of a duck. Examination of essence and existence leads us to a fundamental understanding of finite creatures. It also leads us to an understanding of the Creator, though this needs to be developed further. We have established that in everything, essence and existence are distinct truths. This distinction rests on the actuality and potency that essence receives This distinction rests on the distinction of actuality and potency, that essence receives existence, and that existence makes essence to be. The question now is that can there be any other relationship between essence and existence? If essence is not distinct from existence, then essence and existence must be identified. Now we come to a profound idea of a being whose essence is his existence, that he is being itself. If he has not received anything, there is no potency into him. Then he must be pure act. And if there is no composition of potency in act, then he is absolutely simple, absolutely one. If there is no potency in him, then he must be infinite. Infinite absolute being is God. The God who revealed his name to Moses in the burning bush is I am who am. I am being itself. At this point in my paper, such a being is theoretical. I will address formal proofs at the end of my paper. I would like to conclude and clarify what I have said about essence and existence with two syllogisms by St. Thomas. A syllogism is a form of deductive reasoning discovered by Aristotle. It involves two premises and a conclusion drawn from the relationship between these premises. For example, all A's are B's. All B's are C's. Therefore, all A's are C's. Although these syllogisms involve the idea of God, they are not proofs of God's existence. Instead, they are proofs for the distinction of essence and existence. St. Thomas argues thus: everything that exists is either self-subsisting being or participated being. There can be only one self-subsisting being, just as when we abstract the color white from all particulars, there can be only one white. Therefore, every substance that is not self-subsisting being participates in being. But everything that participates is a compound of that which participates and that which is participated. And the participating principle is in potency to that which it participates. Thus, every finite substance is in potency to being. The second argument runs this way: every creature has a finite being. But being that is not received into something is not finite but absolute. Hence, every creature that has a being that is received into something. Therefore, it must contain two truths: being and that which receives being.